Hi. I thought that it would be interesting to talk about the duality of Julia's character, through what the narrator gives us and what we are told to, like, to take as fact versus this fantasy Julia that Fanny creates, and how the fantasy kind of says more about Fanny than it does about Julia. So some of the observations that are made and are, assumed as fact are she's unmarried, she has no children, she plays the piano, she appears to have a sense of humor. She makes little digs about men being ogres, and it's the use of men, surely, to protect us. She lives in Salisbury. She formerly lived in Kensington, appears to enjoy flowers, and obviously she uses pins. And she's a figure that's gossiped about. She's a figure of intrigue in the little town, which is evidenced by Miss Kingston talking about her. So, Fantasy Julia is just that, a fantasy. It's a creation of Fanny's mind. And some of the things that she assumes or that she creates, she sees her as this woman who's very, set apart. She's encased in glass. There's a lot of glass imagery. It's almost as if she's caged and she can't escape from it. There's a lot of restrictive language when it comes to that part. You break, you pass, you go, but I can't. She also is shown as being very passionate and romantic in Fanny's thoughts. There's the whole bit at the end where she talks about Julia blazing. And obviously that's a very evocative and sensual language. She believes her to be... Fanny believes Julia to have been beautiful in her youth, surrounded by beauty, the gardens, the flowers. And she almost sees her as having been something coveted by men. Because there's the whole bridge boat story, or the boat and the bridge and the guy. And then there's the 3 different types of men that are interested. And she speaks of Julia not marrying and sacrificing her independence, and then uses the river as a sign of freedom. And she also shows her to be lonely and, in search of connection. And then she also sees her to be, this kind of above everything type of woman. She's amazed to find out that, like, Julia goes to the store and buys pins just like everybody else. So one thing I did find interesting when it came to the pins was that I think they were used as, like, kind of a literary device to pull us out of the fantasy. So she starts with the pins, and then she kind of devolves into this fantasy, and then it comes back to the pin, and so on and so forth. So I thought that was really interesting. And finally, what I think that Fanny's fantasy says about Julia is, I think it's kind of reflective. She's almost projecting herself onto Julia. She describes someone who's kind of, again, lonely and in search of connection, and someone who is stuck in a situation or, a societal standard or whatever that she can't escape from. So I think that it shows that what Fanny values most is freedom. You know, and it's kind of like a comparison of, you know, the old versus the young, the you know, what we yearn to be versus what we turn out to be, and like what we are and what we wish we could be. So I just those were my thoughts on it. I hope you found it interesting.